Hi there. So this is Kaya, and I think I finally got Screencast-O-Matic worked out. Thanks for being patient. I got a new Mac, and transferring everything over is not easy, or at least not as easy as I'd hoped it would be. Anyway, so here for Module 6, we've been looking at the difference between what is a teacher-directed inquiry and a student-teacher shared inquiry. And so I'll start with a teacher-directed inquiry because this is actually what I'm working on right now for my project. And this is the idea where we start with something that we know, just in terms of topic or what to teach, how to teach, things like that. But start with something that you're familiar with so you're not reinventing the wheel. And then also, it's easier for teachers to kind of understand things that could be problematic for students as we're familiar with topics and ideas. And in this particular case, it's teacher directed, which means most of the decisions and ideas or concepts are going to come from the teacher. So picking the content area, math or science, the objectives, what we want the students to do, what the issue or the problem is surrounding the unit, whatever sort of is going to spark the learning, whatever the issue that we identify. I like looking at larger issues rather than specific problems personally. And then what are the learning experience, as in what are the lessons going to be? What are the are students going to be participating from technology? Are they going to be doing research with books, computers, however you want the lessons to go? And then whatever assessment options you're going to use, whether it's going to be pen and paper, whether it's going to be a presentation, a poster, things like that. Those are all teacher choices or teacher-driven choices. And then interestingly, the book gives a couple of models for it, which I think are really good places to start, which is why I included this in there. This you are, what if, and the claim judgment. Basically what that means is it's an approach to getting kids to be looking at it from a perspective. So for example, the students in the class, let's say you are the teacher and you have to figure out how to plan your day to allow for 15 minutes of structured play. And so by putting the kids in that role as the teacher, they're going to think about things like math and timing and the day and what we have to do. So the idea that you are the person making this decision and this is the problem you have to solve. So that's one approach that you can take. The second one is what if, giving them a question. So what if you are, what if you're a scientist and you're trying to come up with a new way to recycle? Something like that. And so you put the role of the scientist and the problem solver onto the student. And then the third one is this claim thing, like the best thing for the environment is for us to continue to drive in cars. And the students then have to work with that claim that you've made. I'm sorry, I'm just at 3 minutes. I talk a lot. I apologize. So that's one way or three approaches that you can take when you're starting with a teacher-directed inquiry. The next one is the student-teacher shared inquiry. And this is one I'm not as familiar with as a first grade teacher, and I'm a little more hesitant to do, but I also see a lot of the benefits to it. And this is a part where students take part in some of their decision-making with their learning. Now, having said that, my hesitation for this one as a first grade teacher, I will say that in my classroom, we have agreed upon rules that the students help decide. So understand my hesitation is limited. But the idea that a student teacher shared inquiry is where students have more say, and they identify their own questions and wonderings. They identify their own problems. And this one is interesting because I like how it teaches students to be able to start understanding and identify some of their own problems and how they can also solve their own problems. So I do see the benefit with this. And the two different approaches that you can take, one is the KWH-LAQ. This was a new step for me because this goes on to the KWL chart. But it's what the students know, what they want or need to know. But then it goes into how. How are we going to find out? What do we expect to learn? And then this applying and questions. How are we going to apply this information to other subjects, to our personal lives, to other projects? So basically, how can we transfer our knowledge? And then what new questions? And the questioning part's interesting for me because I find, and I'm trying to teach the students, with every answer you get, you should be able to come up with quite a few more questions. I think that's really important in terms of creating a natural curiosity. The other approach is this OTQ, observe, think, question. And this is really interesting because I really like the idea of teaching kids to stop and look what's happening. What do you notice about something? And then what does that make you think of? What similarities, what differences do you notice? And this really is interesting because it requires students to kind of go back to what they already know and maybe make new connections or come up with new questions, which is the next part, which is now what questions come from your observations or investigations. And so this is an approach that I think is interesting because not only does it have students participate in their own decision making, but it also has them really having to identify their own problems and start thinking about the idea that they are problem solvers themselves. And then the last one, again, I'm sorry, it's like 5 minutes, 40 seconds. How do these different approaches to inquiry affect the classroom? I really put that it's taking things back to the student-centered classroom. Again, talking about the rules that my class and I created. Having kids take part in the decisions within the classroom, I feel like it creates a sense of ownership and pride within the room, and also makes it less that teacher said so. This is what we agreed. This is what we decided we would do. I also feel like it makes more independent learners. As I've been going through this module in these 2 chapters, one of the things that I struggle with and have struggled with for the last couple of years as a teacher is I have very dependent learners. And I notice that because whenever they get stuck in a guided reading group, they look to me. And I keep saying, no, the words are on the page, but they look to me. And when I see that, that shows me that I've created very dependent learners. And so looking at some of these strategies, I think, can help create a sense of independence that students don't need the adult to help them solve their problems in a lot of circumstances. Agency, that's another thing that I'm working on with my project for Dewsbury's class too, is how do I create students who want to learn and take a participatory role in their learning? And then also the problem solving and transfer of learning. A lot of my kids say that they're here so that they can get a good job when they grow up, or they're here because their parents say so. And I want them to really kind of expand their thinking that the way that we don't give up here with reading is very similar to the way that they don't give up in a video game. You know, I mean, I hate to make that connection because I'm not a huge video game fan, but, you know, the way that these kids and sit for hours upon hours to work on a level in a video game should be the same tenacity that we should see in our learning of hours and hours of not giving up on trying and learning new things within the classroom. Sorry about the rant. It's 7 minutes. I'm sorry. So there you go. Thanks.